The Lutz family had envisioned a new beginning when they moved into the house at 112 Ocean Avenue. George, Kathy, and their 3 children had dreamed of a charming colonial home where laughter would echo through the halls, where memories would be made, and where they could finally settle down. Yet, from the very first moment they stepped inside, a palpable tension hung in the air, a whisper of something sinister lurking just beneath the surface. The house, with its grand facade and picturesque setting, belied a history that was anything but serene. They brushed aside the unease, attributing it to the stress of moving, focusing instead on unpacking boxes and arranging furniture, determined to create a warm, welcoming home. As the days unfolded, the Lutz family found themselves ensnared in an unsettling web of inexplicable occurrences. It began subtly, an unexplained chill that settled in the corners of the house, an icy breath that seemed to seep through the walls no matter how high they cranked the thermostat. Nights grew longer, filled with strange noises that echoed through the empty rooms. The slamming of doors, the sound of footsteps pacing in the dark, and whispers that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. George, a man of reason, began to feel an overwhelming presence that loomed over him, a weight that pressed down on his chest, robbing him of sleep and peace of mind. He awoke in the dead of night, heart racing, the shadows around him morphing into something malevolent, something that made him question his own sanity. By the 5th day, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically, and the family was confronted with a bizarre infestation of large, aggressive flies. They buzzed relentlessly, filling the air with their incessant droning, particularly in a room that felt increasingly like the epicenter of the strange happenings. It was winter. The cold air should have kept insects at bay, yet the flies seemed to have materialized from nowhere, swarming around them with a ferocity that left the family bewildered and increasingly uneasy. They searched for logical explanations, open windows, forgotten food, but nothing seemed to justify the relentless invasion. The presence of the flies only deepened their sense of dread, as if they were a harbinger of something worse to come. As the days turned into a blur of unease, the supernatural events escalated. George began hearing voices calling his name in the stillness of the night, sometimes soft and pleading, other times loud and commanding. Each utterance sent shivers down his spine, a reminder that he was not alone in the house. Kathy, too, was not spared from the house's torment. She felt cold hands brushing against her neck, phantom grips that sent her heart racing. The children, once filled with excitement about their new home, grew anxious, their laughter replaced by whispers of fear. They felt eyes upon them, an unseen audience watching their every move, and each room seemed to pulse with a different, darker energy, as if the house itself were alive. The incidents grew more alarming as furniture began to shift on its own. Chairs turned to face walls. Objects appeared in places they had never been. In the basement, a grotesque discovery awaited them. The walls oozed a green slime, a viscous substance that defied explanation. It was both grotesque and unsettling, the very essence of their dread made manifest. The Lutz family stood frozen in disbelief, grappling with the reality that their once dream home had transformed into a nightmare. On the 15th day, Kathy was jolted awake by a terrifying vision. A ghostly figure, a man clad in a black suit, stood at the foot of her bed, his eyes glowing a sinister red. The sight was enough to send her heart racing, a paralyzing fear taking hold. Meanwhile, the children reported strange figures lurking in the shadows, their imaginations ignited by the house's dark energy. The coldness that emanated from these apparitions was palpable, wrapping around them like a shroud, and the family began to feel as if they were being drawn into a vortex of malevolence. As the haunting intensified, the Lutz family's mental and emotional well-being began to unravel. George was plagued by vivid nightmares of Ronald DeFeo, the house's previous owner, and the gruesome murders that had taken place there. He woke in cold sweats, the images of blood and terror etched into his mind. Kathy's health deteriorated, bruises and scratches appearing on her body inexplicably, as if the house were claiming her as its own. The children, once carefree, were now beset by nightmares and whispered fears of invisible entities that haunted their dreams. By the final week, the family's turmoil reached a fever pitch. George's demeanor shifted. He became distant, agitated, and increasingly unrecognizable to his loved ones. Kathy, struggling to maintain her sanity, felt as though she were slipping away, the house's grip tightening around her. The children, terrified, clung to each other, their innocence shattered by the relentless horrors that surrounded them. The house, once a symbol of hope, had become a prison, its walls closing in, suffocating them with fear. In a moment of sheer terror, George experienced a profound transformation. He felt as though he were being possessed by an evil force, his personality warped by the malevolent energy that coursed through the house. He lashed out at his family, unable to control the rage that surged within him. It was then that Kathy understood. They had to leave. They had to escape before the house consumed them entirely. On January 14th, 1976, after just 28 harrowing days, the Lutz family fled 112 Ocean Avenue, leaving behind their belongings, their dreams, and the remnants of a life that had turned into a waking nightmare. They could no longer endure the terror that had seeped into their very souls. The house stood silent as they drove away, its dark history now intertwined with their own. The Lutz family would never return, forever haunted by the memories of a place that had promised so much but delivered only fear and despair.